All right. Time for another exciting episode of the JoshCast. Right here at KNERD, Los Angeles. Hey. That was whatever that was unfortunate. That was an unfortunate way. It was an unfortunate way to begin the podcast. Mr. Johnson, what happened at the beginning of the podcast? Well, he pretended, Mr. Anderson, he pretended to be on a radio station called WNERD, as in W-Nerd. Ah, I see. An interesting attempt at humor, wouldn't you say? Yes, very interesting. That's my impression of, I guess, my inner critics. There you go. Good. Starting off with a weird note. That's always my plan. The back of my throat is bothering me, and I'm afraid that it's heart problems. That's immediately where I jump to, because I heard somewhere somebody say, oh, the first thing that happened was shortness of breath. And it doesn't feel like shortness of breath per se, but it feels like a tickle at the back of my throat. Probably acid reflux, or it could be my apartment's getting dusty, and it's an allergy thing. I'm not entirely sure, but the question is, how out of proportion do I want to blow it this morning? On a scale of 1 to, oh my God, there is no hope. So that is happening here in the great city of, I don't know what city I live in. I think it's Studio City, now that I've moved. But the physical address, I think, is Studio City, but it could also be Los Angeles. And then my P.O. box is in Moore Park. I didn't even know there was a Moore Park. I thought that was a street. I didn't know that was a city. Joshy confused. And then when I described to people where I live, they're like, oh yeah, that's Toluca Lake. What? It can't all be the same thing. What kind of space-time vortex have I gotten myself into? I should be critiquing podcasts, and yet I seem to be in 3 cities at once. Blast! I went to the Wikipedia page for Toluca Lake, because my question is there a lake in Toluca Lake? And according to Wikipedia, there is a lake in Toluca Lake. However, the lake is inaccessible to the public. It is apparently owned and operated by the houses that surround the lake. So it's a private lake. So I feel like the slogan of Toluca Lake should be, welcome to Toluca Lake, stay out of the lake. Welcome to Toluca Lake. Ooh, I'm going to do something a bit scandalous here. Going to skip to the left-hand turn lane, which involved me actually going into oncoming traffic for a moment. I did it because the guy in front of me did it, and really, isn't that the reason why anyone does anything? Lemmings, ladies and gentlemen, am I right? And I, right there, saved 2.5 seconds of my commute. Anyway, back to the Toluca Lake thing. How can you call a place something and then not let people see that something? That's what, am I crazy? Welcome to Denver. Oh, what's Denver like? You can't see it! Only the 1% may experience the beauty of Denver. It strikes me as somehow, you know what? It just strikes me as elitist. That's what I'll say. That you can only experience the lake in Toluca Lake if you own a certain kind of property. And then to call it Toluca Lake. Well, they probably named it Toluca Lake, and then this lake situation just evolved out of that. So it probably, I'm sure whoever initially called it Toluca Lake said, well, we have a lake, we're in Toluca. Let's call it Toluca Lake. Let's enjoy this. Oh, that was the other thing I learned from the Wikipedia page, by the way, that there's also near Toluca Lake is the city of Van Nuys. Van Nuys was a person. And apparently, his full name was Isaac Newton Van Nuys. So his parents hoped that he would be the next generation of scientist, mathematician. And what did he give us? What was Isaac Newton Van Nuys' contribution to the world? A relatively small city with an abundance of laundromats. You're welcome, Sir Isaac Newton Van Nuys. That's a tough one right there. That makes me want to name, well, assuming I have a child. I mean, I was about to say that once. That makes me want to name my kid, but I feel like as soon as I said that, anyone who would be listening to this podcast would go, well, that's ridiculous. But I would want to name my child. Okay, I got to interrupt what I'm talking about because I'm driving by. There's this police cruiser, and there's some tape. But the cruiser is inside the radius of the tape. So it almost looked for a second like the crime had been committed in the cruiser. Is that an apt metaphor for Los Angeles? I'll let the podcast listeners decide. Well, I'm doing my stats, and 12 people apparently downloaded the last podcast, or there were 12 downloads, so the same person could have downloaded it 12 times. I'm downloading my own podcast 12 times. That's what that means. Where was I, though? I was on a non sequitur, and now I have to find the sequitur again. What was I talking about? What was I talking about? Must not have been... Oh, yes, Van Nuys. That's right. What would I name... I would name my child... What would I name my child? Well, the first thought was Albert Einstein, but that's happened already. Albert Brooks, his real name is Albert Einstein, but he changed his name to Albert Brooks because you can't go around being Albert Einstein. You can't do that. It's too difficult. It feels like I have phlegm in my throat. That's what it feels like right now. Maybe it's just a phlegm situation. Post-nasal drip kind of a thing. I can't tell. I am not certain. Suddenly feeling very tired. I didn't get a lot of sleep last night. Funny thing I did is I said to myself, I'm going to fall asleep. I'm going to take 10 breaths and fall asleep. And I somehow was actually able to do it. I was actually able to manifest my own destiny last night. And I don't know what to do with this information. I mean, I hope I'm going to try that all day. I'm going to manifest my destiny. I'm going to manifest my destiny. Let's start with this podcast. This is going to be the funniest, most groundbreaking podcast that has ever been put on the internet. That's what's going to happen. It's going to be funny and groundbreaking. Now, my fear, because I'm doing this while I'm driving, my fear is I say that and then I'm going to get into a massive accident or something. And I'll be podcasting the accident, and that will, in turn, get a lot of hits on social media. I don't want to get into an accident. Let me qualify manifesting my destiny. This is going to be a funny and groundbreaking podcast that will not involve pain, physical pain, or an accident of any kind. It will be pleasant to create this podcast. I'm just being very clear when I'm manifesting my destiny here. Pleasant to create this podcast. And I'm seeing this person trying to cross the street and they're not using the crosswalk, and that irritates me. Why does that happen? Trying to save themselves a few seconds? Is that what it is? Who do you think you are, sir? To just blatantly ignore the crosswalk and cross whenever you darn well please. Who do you think you are? Have I manifested a groundbreaking and funny podcast yet? I don't think so. Ooh, what kind of car is that? That is a Lexus. Ooh, but it's souped up. It is a souped up Lexus. It's a Lexus that you can be used to race, like the Fast and the Furious, a franchise I've never seen because I don't connect and I don't relate well to I'm interrupting myself because I just realized I'm in this center turn lane. I thought that it was just a one car waiting to parallel park, but it turns out I actually am skipping a ton of traffic. I didn't mean to do that. I didn't mean to be one of those guys that goes into the center turn lane that you're not supposed to go into when there's traffic, to just skip all the traffic. I so just did that. I'm so one of those guys. You know, if that's the case, if I so just did that, and I'm one of those guys, I feel like those guys also, they have a lot of sex. Casual sex. And they don't even have to work at it. They just kind of fall into a casual sex situation. They're just at a bar, and they run into someone named Nicole. And Nicole's like, so what do you do for a living? Oh, I'm a graphic designer. Really? Yes. Yeah, graphic designer. Oh, that's interesting. I'm in publishing. Really? Yeah. Yeah, I'm in publishing. I just got out of a nasty relationship. Sorry to hear that. Yeah, it was a very messy breakup. What happened? Well, I don't want to go into the nitty-gritty details of it, but my last boyfriend was Sonic the Hedgehog. Wait, the Sonic the Hedgehog? Yes, Sonic the Hedgehog. Like the hedge? Yeah, yes, the hedgehog. The hedgehog that can turn into a ball and go very fast. That was my last boyfriend, Sonic the Hedgehog. Wow. Sounds intense. It was at points, but it just didn't work out. May I ask why? Well, he only wore shoes in public. I'm not following. He was completely naked in public except for the shoes. Yeah, but I mean, he was a hedgehog, so I'm sure the fur covered everything. That's beside the point. I asked him on several occasions to please stop embarrassing me and put on, not, just shorts at least. And he refused to do it. He said it would get in the way of the wind resistance. Or it would cause wind resistance. I don't understand. He said it would cause wind resistance. Wow. You telling me that alone was the reason why you broke up? Well, he was also afraid of commitment. But I gotta say, even if he committed to it, I would have to draw the line. You have to wear clothing in this society. I mean, am I crazy? Honey, you're not crazy. Would you like to have casual sex? Would you like to have casual rebound sex? Yes, I would. Wow. Somebody just drove past, and either they were really blasting the music or they were screaming to the music. And that's, I couldn't do that. I could not do that. First of all, I don't listen to that kind of music. It'd be weird to scream to the soundtrack to Hook. La 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 la. You can't even really scream that. It's not like rock music. I mean, you can sing along to it, but it's not something you can, rage to. Again, they're cutting the trees along Magnolia Boulevard. Why do they do this during rush hour? Wait until the middle of the day to cut the damn trees. And now everyone's got to move over to the lane because they're cutting the trees. My God. It's full of stars. That was a quote from 2010, sequel to 2001. I enjoyed the sequel to 2001 and 2010, as I mentioned. I did enjoy the sequel to this. This doesn't feel like a groundbreaking podcast to me. I tried to manifest something here. What's going on? Why isn't it groundbreaking? Is it because there's still phlegm in my throat? What do I have to do to make this groundbreaking? I'm also boring myself. That's not a good thing. If I'm boring myself, how am I going to make the listeners interested in what I'm saying? That's the question. I have to be committed to what I'm saying. I have to care about what I'm saying. I have to care about the topics. Clearly, he didn't care about the topics when he was recording this podcast. I would hardly call it groundbreaking. What do you think, Mr. Anderson? Yes, indeed, not groundbreaking in the least. Do you want to know what a groundbreaking podcast is? I'll tell you. I was recording a podcast in 1914. They didn't have podcasts in 1914. Don't interrupt me! I am Mr. Anderson, and when I talk, you listen. I was recording a groundbreaking podcast in 1914. The ship I was on, the good ship Sandra, was struck by a sperm whale. Don't make any jokes about the name of the whale. I wasn't going to make any jokes about the name of the whale. Yes, you were. I could see it. I could see your lip twitch. Your lip twitches when you were always about to make a crass joke. But indeed it was a sperm whale. I could change the name of the whale for the sake of this story, to make it less of a distraction. Would it be easier if I called it a humpback whale? That's a bad example of another whale that has a kind of sexual name to it. How about a blue whale? There's nothing you can do with a blue whale. It's just blue. Well, you could do past tense of blowjob. Don't! I was hit by a whale, all right? I was hit by a whale. The ship was sinking slowly. I figured I had an hour left to live, so I recorded a podcast, assuming it would be the last thing I ever did. Can I interrupt your story to ask why we have horrible English accents? No, you cannot! The ship was sinking, and I recorded the greatest podcast. I podcasted about all kinds of things. I wasn't just talking. By God, I was podcasting. I podcasted about my father. I podcasted about my mother. I podcasted about the blueberries in the spring in Iowa. Because they're different than the blueberries in spring in Montana. And by God, I was going to let the world know about it! And that ship sank, and I was rescued at the last second by another ship that was called the Tim. And my podcast did see the light of day, and it was groundbreaking. And though only 2 people downloaded it, because at the time no one did podcasts, and I'm not entirely sure how those 2 people could download it, because no one could download in 1914, but somehow they heard it. And they said to me, Mr. Anderson, that was groundbreaking. That is a groundbreaking podcast. I assure you, that is a groundbreaking podcast. Perhaps I'm going insane. Perhaps that's what's happening. It could be. A friend is telling me last night about the difference between chronic depression and clinical depression, and I feel like I have one of them. I think he said one was what it just comes on without any warning, it's chemical. And the other one is I'm a human being. I think that's the definition of the other one. The other one is I'm aware of what's happening around me and processing it. Ergo, I'm depressed. But I do think I have it. And I think that I think I've gotten to a point now where I think it's gotten so bad that I don't notice it. That's what is scaring me. I'm thinking to myself, oh, you know what? Everything's actually fine. Everything's actually fine right now. I think I've worked through this, and everything is fine. I don't know why I'm crying. Everything's totally fine. I'm still convinced I have phlegm in the back of my throat. Everything's fine. Everything is fine. I read somewhere that if I smile for a minute, I'll actually feel better because it creates endorphins and my body thinks I'm actually happy. And that makes me not want to smile even more. You mean to tell me, oh, it's that easy to just be happy after all these years? I'm going to not do that just for spite to the study and to those scientists who sat there for an hour smiling and measuring each other. And when I say measuring each other, I don't mean the sexual connotation of that. Although, that could be why their study showed what their study showed, and that could mean that their study is skewed just a tiny bit. passing by a cyclist, which always makes me very nervous. I don't like cyclists because I'm afraid of running into them with my car. I'm going to knock on wood and say poo, 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 that never happens, which brings up my obsessive-compulsive disorder, which I just have now found out is obsessive-compulsive, not obsessive-compulsive personality. Nope, it's pure obsessive-compulsive. If I knock on wood, then this irrational connection that I'm making will come to be. Ergo, if I knock on wood, I'm not going to have a heart attack. That is obsessive-compulsive disorder. Something else that I have. I could take medication. I don't want to. So I guess the disorder is not severe enough to impair me in my daily life. But it is a noticeable thing that my brain does. I've talked about this before. I don't know why I need to preface that. But you know what? If knocking on wood makes me feel better for the 2 seconds that I knock on wood, is that a problem? Maybe it's my brain going, look, clearly you can't relax. So I'm going to invent something here that's so phenomenally insane, it will distract you from the inevitability of death long enough to not be scared. Maybe it's not a disorder. Maybe it's an obsessive-compulsive life hack. Did you ever think about that, science community? Medical journals? Obsessive-compulsive life hack. That's what it is. That is entirely what it could be. I don't feel good right now, because the only thing I've eaten in 24 hours has been about 5 mini bars of chocolate. I don't think I have enough energy to function right now. I'm amazed that I'm able to talk this much. I'm terrified that this podcast was not groundbreaking enough. I am terrified. I don't think it was as good as the one that was recorded in 1914 on the sinking Sandra. But what can you do other than put it out there and let it affect people as it will?